The First Indochina War, 1946 to 1954, was not just a regional conflict, it was a turning point in global history, a brutal struggle that sowed the seeds of America's Vietnam War and marked the start of decolonization in Southeast Asia. To understand how this war began, one must look back to the colonial period and the complex interplay between nationalism, imperialism, and the emerging Cold War. This documentary-style article explores how France's imperial ambitions collided with Vietnamese independence movements, and how global powers like the United States, the Soviet Union, and China began staking claims in a war that would grow far beyond Indochina. Colonial roots, France in Indochina. France had ruled over Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, collectively known as French Indochina, since the late 19th century. French colonial rule was marked by economic exploitation, forced labor, and the suppression of Vietnamese political rights. A small elite of French-educated Vietnamese did rise, but most of the population lived in poverty, under the shadow of foreign domination. During the 1930s and 1940s, nationalist movements began to rise, inspired by global anti-colonial currents and resentment toward French rule. Among these was the Indochinese Communist Party, led by a revolutionary named Ho Chi Minh, who would become the face of Vietnamese resistance. World War II, the catalyst. The outbreak of World War II brought major shifts. In 1940, France itself fell to Nazi Germany. The French colony of Indochina was handed over to the collaborationist Vichy regime, and soon after, Japan occupied Vietnam, while allowing Vichy French administrators to remain in place. During this time, Ho Chi Minh and his followers formed the Viet Minh, a communist-led nationalist movement aiming to resist both Japanese and French control. With support from the United States Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the precursor to the CIA, the Viet Minh waged guerrilla warfare against the Japanese. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the power vacuum allowed Ho Chi Minh to make his move. The August Revolution and brief independence. In the days following Japan's surrender, the Viet Minh seized control of Hanoi and declared Vietnamese independence on September 2, 1945, with Ho Chi Minh quoting the American Declaration of Independence in his speech. But the joy was short-lived. The Allies had agreed to return Indochina to French control, and British and Chinese troops entered Vietnam to oversee the surrender of Japanese forces. Soon after, French forces began to return, determined to reassert their colonial authority. Negotiations between Ho Chi Minh and the French briefly offered hope, but both sides had fundamentally different goals. Ho wanted full independence, the French wanted a return to empire. The outbreak of war, 1946. Tensions escalated through 1946. The Viet Minh controlled the north, while French troops reoccupied major cities like Hanoi and Haiphong. Clashes became common. On November 23, 1946, the French Navy bombarded the port city of Haiphong, killing thousands of Vietnamese civilians. This brutal act shattered any remaining hopes for peaceful settlement. On December 19, 1946, the Viet Minh launched a coordinated attack on French positions in Hanoi. This marked the official beginning of the First Indochina War. The Cold War arrives in Southeast Asia. Though initially a colonial war, the conflict soon drew in Cold War powers. The United States, committed to stopping the spread of communism, began providing financial and military aid to the French, believing that a Viet Minh victory would lead to a communist domino effect in Asia. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union and Communist China supported Ho Chi Minh, framing the war as part of the global struggle against Western imperialism. The Cold War had come to Southeast Asia, not through direct superpower confrontation, but through a proxy struggle that would only intensify in the years to come. The First Indochina War was rooted in the long, painful history of colonial domination, but it quickly evolved into a global confrontation shaped by ideology, nationalism, and Cold War rivalry. It ended in 1954 with the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, a stunning Viet Minh victory that forced France to abandon its colonial ambitions in Vietnam. But peace was fleeting. The Geneva Accords temporarily divided Vietnam, setting the stage for the next, and even bloodier, chapter, the Vietnam War. In many ways, the First Indochina War was the spark that ignited America's long and tragic involvement in Southeast Asia, and it all began with a people fighting for freedom from colonial chains.